Hello and welcome to Two Tall Guys Talking Sales. We're your hosts. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Sean.
And we're glad you're here. For the next 15 minutes, we'll talk about a sales issue, big and small, for salespeople, sales leaders, and selling situations. We're glad you're here, and let's get started. Hey, Sean, we're back here. We're live. I want to possibly trigger you. Can you handle being triggered here for a minute?
Maybe. What are you going to do to me?
I'm going to prompt you with 3 words, and I want your immediate reaction. You ready?
Go for it.
Pipe and drape. What do you think of?
Oh my. I think of some sore feet, 10,000 people that I don't even know walking by. I'm trying to get them to come into our booth. Can't figure out how to get them into our booth. But more than anything, the first thing that comes to my mind is extremely sore feet at the end of the day. So sore that you were afraid to take your shoe off because you were afraid it was going to be even worse if you actually saw your feet. That's the first thing that comes to mind. But lots of people saying no, lots of people walking by and ignoring me. And then the occasional person stops in. We have a really great conversation. Or maybe we're catching up with an old friend who also walks by. But I'm thinking of the trade show, and I'm sure that's what you were talking about.
100%. Trade shows in a pre-COVID environment were the lifeblood of a lot of sales organizations. There were cottage industries about how to follow up with leads you received at a trade show. But here we are in a post-COVID world, and what we saw in the midst of COVID was pipeline evacuation. Pipelines dried up or they were sold through and they just were never replenished. For today, I'd like to challenge us to get really hyper tactical on building an outbound pipeline effectively. This should target salespeople and sales leaders that may really be struggling even still to get their messaging right in an outbound format.
Great lead in there. Thank you very much. But it does make me come back to, and maybe this is a good place for us to start, kind of the last trade show that I was in before COVID kicked in. And I was at a young company. It was a startup. I was the chief revenue officer. We had just come out with our product. In fact, to be honest, our product almost didn't even work. It kind of worked. It didn't really work, but we were ready to go out and get some feedback from clients or some prospects. We had a couple customers that were using our product, but they were very forgiving in that whole process. But it was time for us to really test our mettle. We went to a trade show and we talked to a lot of prospects, and we didn't have a lot of success because we thought we knew what our value proposition was, our unique value proposition. But we found out that as we started talking to customers, we didn't have it nailed down. My first advice to somebody that is starting prospecting, starting to reach out to customers, or maybe you're already doing it, is do you have your unique value proposition nailed? Because if you don't, you're not going to get the perfect customer in that outbound effort. You're going to get bad customers, or you're going to get slammed in the door because you're not even able to get that perfect customer. They're not going to pay attention to you. The first thing I tell everybody is, what are you going to say and what makes it unique and valuable to your prospects?
Absolutely. Making it valuable to your prospects in the terms that they measure value is where I extend that same statement. We were talking offline at lunch the other week about how we reach potential prospects or leads and how important omnichannel outreach is. And you gave us an interesting statistic about how many touches it takes to actually reach someone.
It used to be, back when I was a young person, first getting started in sales, sales management, that you had to reach out to somebody 2 or 3 times, 4 times before they respond. And then it got a little worse as time went on. And as you know, I'm an old man. As time went on, it got to 6 or 7 or 8 times. The current stats that I've seen out there are 12. I saw a stat the other day that said you had to touch a prospect 16 times before they were actually going to respond to you. I would say that the current stat right now is somewhere in that range, 12 to 16 times before you should actually give up. The bad thing is every stat that I see about human behavior from salespeople is they give up after 4 or 5 or 6 times. Roughly, they're getting half, maybe only 30 or 40% of the way through that process. Now, maybe they're being successful because maybe they have a great proposition and that's going to work. But if the average is that low and the average is that high, that means the average number of touches that a salesperson is willing to do and the average number of requests that it takes to get somebody's attention, if there's that much of a gap, chances are you're not doing a great job. That's where that omni-channel thing comes from, that we got to be working on that across lots of different avenues. And that takes a process, a pipeline building process that you have to go through. And you have to do it the same all the time and consistently, so you know where to make tweaks, you know where to make it better. I suggest that you're doing email outreach and you're getting some feedback there. To the same person, you're making some phone calls. You don't have to do just cold calls, just want to follow up and did you get my email? But you're making some phone call outreach. You're doing some LinkedIn outreach, that same person, trying to build that rapport on LinkedIn. Maybe there's other social media that is unique to your environment, your company, and what you sell and what your prospect will be involved in. Maybe Facebook ads and all that kind of outreach makes sense as well. I'm not going to say that it's not, but you have to have a truly and wide capability of reaching out. And that might even be relying on the US Postal Service and to drop a letter in the mail. And God forbid we're going to do that, but it might actually help you a little bit.
Wow, the direct mail reference is not one I've heard in a while. I've actually got a buddy who's in the legal area, and he does a lot of mailing because it attracts his demographic to his specific legal service. The idea here, that in summary, is that to do good outbound, we need to first start and nail our value proposition. Then we have to reframe that value proposition into a problem a customer might be having. If we just lead with my feature, my benefit, me, I know that I'm going to put somebody who sends me an email like that or a LinkedIn message like that straight to the spam filter. And that's what we're all trying to avoid. If you go and read your existing messaging, make sure it's in the customer's focus, not in the me, I, we. If it uses those pronouns regularly, you need to rewrite and refresh your messaging. Value, frame for the customer, multiple touches. Let's talk about sequences. There's email sequences, there's actually behavioral sequences. When I'm talking to my customers, I'm talking about how are we touching people. Certain demographics, certain roles, if we're working C-level down or bottom up, where we're trying to build consensus, requires a different methodology or a medium for contact. I was working with a CEO who was leading his own sales effort. Guy does a great job of connecting. He was touching via email. He was reinforcing with awareness, attraction, Instagram and LinkedIn posts, and he was texting effectively to his high influence contacts. That kind of cadence and medium use allowed him to have a much more robust traction at about that 13 to 15 touches, because somebody needs to experience you. Think about McDonald's for a minute. We see McDonald's ads on YouTube. We see billboards. We see apps on, if you use Waze, you get the, hey, next exit, have you tried a Big Mac? Have you tried a whatever? The mediums they're trying to reach us are widely varied. If the big marketers B2C get it, we can too. They're giving us the template. It's the cheat code. We have to be willing to engage our audience in new and different ways. And Sean, you hit a really strong chord, I think, earlier when you said, hey, most salespeople, on average, B2B salespeople, give up after 4 touches. It's like running half the race. If the race is 100 meters and you run 50, you will never win. The winners run the whole race. And if you need to discuss that in more in depth about your business, you should reach out to Sean and I, because this is something we do all the time. Value proposition, customer relationship, customer connection, and customer traction. If you haven't listened to our last episode about the 3-legged stool, this is the inbound and outbound discussion. This is those 2 legs that we're talking about for building a pipeline.
Just want to add one other item to your list, and that is, do you know what your value is to a particular industry? And are you going after the right industry? Your unique value proposition may be targeted to a specific customer, and you might have a different one targeted to a different customer. Don't feel bad if you say, I say one thing to one type of customer, maybe it's a manufacturing customer. I say something else to a distribution company. I say something else to a retail outlet. I don't know your business or the people that are listening to this podcast, but it is possible that is the case. And that's okay, But then you need to make unique messaging for every one of those and unique tries for each one of those. And you need to make sure that you understand what that issue is. Let's talk a little bit about some of the tools, not without naming tools, but just a high level, some tools that sales managers, CEOs can fund, but salespeople can use today that will make that process easier. And I want to re-impress everybody that you need to have a process that you're going to do for prospecting, because otherwise you're going to lose count. Did I try to reach out 8 times or did I try to reach out 6 times? Have a process that's built in. The first thing I suggest is you actually have some type of task manager tool that you're going to create this out, and everybody you're going to go after is going to go through that same process. That could be Asana, that could be Trello, if that's the tools that you use in your company. Could be Monday, if you use some type of a workflow kind of a tool like that. It could also be your CRM system, depending on which CRM system you have. Worst case, it's an Excel document. Don't do that, but if you have to, if you're a sales guy and you don't have any better tools, at least use Excel. But map out, when did I touch? What did I do? And I do the same thing over and over again. That way you can tweak it. Some of the tools you can use, there are great tools for LinkedIn prospecting. Go ahead and look at them. You can maybe automate some of that effort for yourself. That's okay. Be careful. Don't get in trouble with LinkedIn, but those are good tools to use on a regular basis. Your CRM, if you have one, probably has some merging capabilities, so you can do some merging. Also, just built into Word and Outlook, you can do mail merges, Word, Outlook, and Excel. You can do some mail merges there to make that process a little easier. Doing regular mailings that way with the same message over and over is a good thing. You don't have to have really expensive tools. You probably have access to them. You just have to be a little bit creative in how you use them. You can also have tools that help you with sending out text messages. There's tools out there to make that same message over and over again, but relatively cheap. You can probably expense it. Just call it lunch. Your boss will never know. It'll be okay.
Oh, now you're going to get us in trouble. Oh, we're going to end up on somebody's CFO report and explaining expenses. I can see it coming. All kidding aside, this is what we're talking about when we say omnichannel. We've got text, we've got phone, we've got email, we've got LinkedIn, we've got all these tools available to us. And the onus is now on the salesperson to find, use, and leverage them to gain more prospect traction. We're coming close to the top of our time here. If you're a salesperson out there and you're saying, oh, shucks, I recognize the value here, but I don't know where to start, I'm going to encourage you to start your own journey with research. There's tons of people on LinkedIn. I follow them. If you're not connected with Sean or I, please reach out to us. We will connect you to the people that we hold in high value. We've done the research. And if we don't know, we'll find somebody, because our networks are vast to the point where we know who to go ask the question of to return value to you. LinkedIn is a treasure trove of content. All of the CRM publishers, you can name them all: Pipedrive, HubSpot, Salesforce, right on down the line. All the big CRM platforms have in their resources section references to things like how to write a first sequence, how to do outreach. If you're looking for tools, they are commercially available. You do not have to start with a blank sheet of paper. That's kind of the reason that Sean and I started this podcast. We wanted to empower people like us in the past to have these tools available for them. And that's our give back to you. And we hope that can be of value to you.
That's a great end of the topic, end of the podcast hint there. You have the ability to be powerful, to sell. Use those tools, be a student of this career that you've chosen, and be good at it. And one of the ways that you're good at it is you read all of those resources that are available to you. And it doesn't matter which CRM system you like or which one you're using. As Kevin just said, they all have great blog posts and how to do this and how to do that. If you don't have access to those, please reach out. But our podcast is just about done for the day. We appreciate you being here, and we hope that it's been valuable for you to spend your last 15 minutes on Two Tall Guys Talking Sales. Thank you very much for joining us on this podcast of Two Tall Guys Talking Sales. We hope that we were able to share some valuable insight, valuable knowledge with you to make your selling adventures easier and more successful. Please join us every week. We drop these on Tuesday afternoon at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Please subscribe to us in your favorite podcast player. Also, please join us on LinkedIn, where we do a CEO workshop. And that CEO workshop is dedicated monthly to big questions that CEOs are having and how to grow their business and drive sales. You can find us on LinkedIn. Just search for Two Tall Guys Talking Sales. Thank you very much. Have a great day.